Good ball. He didn't get a touch. Van der Bijl couldn't believe it, throwing his arms up there, thinking that that must be surely the time that David Dyer exits from this arena. At the moment, he's looking as if he'd be just as badly off in as a gladiator. He's having a terrible time.
Mike Proctor now attempting to change his line to Jimmy Cook. He hasn't looked remotely like breaking through Jimmy's defence. Now bowling round the wicket to see whether the ball going across the right hander might induce a fault by him.
Proctor in his 5th over. Oh, that's a good one. He's gone. Oh, I thought that would be it.
Yes, Mike Proctor, the wily schemer, changed his line. Hadn't at this stage beaten Jimmy Cook at all. Bowled the ball. His natural in-swinger swung it from probably off stump, swinging it in towards the middle stump. One can expect that Van der Bijl and Proctor, both 7, 8 overs to come, are much more difficult to get hold of later on in the knock.
Oh, lovely shot. Through the gap, 4 runs for Pollock.
These two fellows, the greatest of pals. They used to stand together for Natal for many years.
Oh, lovely shot. 4 runs.
Super stroke there by Fotheringham.
Pollock 28. 6 lovely runs. That's the sort of shot that really gets the crowd buzzing and they see true greatness. Here we go again. It's another great smashing 6.
Hit the scoreboard.
Hit the scoreboard. What a beauty.
And this is the danger of the man Pollock. For Ian Tayfield, 2 balls that weren't really all that bad, punished to the maximum extent.
Adson to bowl to Pollock on 49. There's the 50. Rails coming round, but there'll be 2 there. Pollock's 50. Listen to the crowd. Let them take it. Applause for Graham Pollock. There's Fotheringham's 50. Applause for Fotheringham.
Up the net, Jan.
Oh, that's a great 6 over square leg. Halfway up the stand. A great 6, beautifully timed by Pollock. Takes him on to 97. He's 3 away from 100, and I want to tell you, the Wanderers will erupt here when he gets that century if he does. Let's watch this now. Wilkins bowling to Pollock. He's on 97. The crowd would love a 4 or another 6. Has he got it? This could be the 100. It's 100. Pollock's 100. Oh, let the crowd take it. A magnificent knock. The entire Wanderers is standing. He's gone. Pollock gone. A bad, rather lazy shot. Probably a tired man. That's Fotheringham having a full go. It's 6 over mid-on. Into the stand. Van der Bijl, 6, Pennyworth, that's a big one. High up in the top of the stands here. Whoa, it's bounced over the top, out of the ground. Now let's see what Van der Bijl's got to offer this time. Oh, it's a slashing 4 through the covers. What a great shot. Beautiful. Well, adding some tremendous excitement towards the end of this wonderful final. It's more runs, that's 4pence. Oh, that was wonderful. Nielsen moved across, and so he hit it where Nielsen was. Fine cricket. Macmillan to Van der Bijl. That's away, that's a 6 over mid-wicket. just over the pickets. Line 6. He's come up very fast. That one's high. It could be gone. Curry's under it. He's caught it. That's the fight over.
Neal, lovely to have you on my podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you. The last time I saw you, Neal, I just have to tell this quick story and then I'll leave it up. I go over to you. The last time I saw you was in 1976. I was playing a club match for Pirates second team at Old Parks on the B field. We got bowled out for about 15, and after about 40 minutes, our game was over, and I walked up to the A field to watch Old Parks first team play against, I think it was called Marks Park Cricket Club. My mate Francois Weideman, who went to school with me, played for Marks Park. He was a fast bowler, played for the Transvaal Mean Machine as your teammate. You were bowling to Marks Park at the time, and you bowled, it was overcast sort of English conditions, and I think a bit of a sign of what was to come. Neal Radford running into bowl on a bit of a green wicket at Old Parks, overcast conditions, and you were swinging it literally both ways like a banana. Those guys couldn't get back to ball. You had them, I'll never forget the black hair running in. It was sort of, it was really awesome for a young guy of, I think I was about 16 at the time, to watch that. And then it's the next time I now see you for the first time since then. You've had a hell of a career in cricket since 1976. I think that you just started playing for Transvaal B at that time. Can you take us from 1976 just to start? What happened after that day? What?
Well, I mean, I you know, it was interesting because when my father started coaching us as kids, predominantly it was football because he was a semi-professional footballer in England, played for Gillingham Town, and then when he went to Rhodesia, he ended up captaining Rhodesia. And he just loved football, but he played social cricket, you know, on the mines, because that was my father's job. He was an underground official. Started as a stoker, ended up running a division, and retired on the mines. And in those days, you know, as kids, all we wanted to do was play the ball. It didn't matter what size the ball was, as long as we had a ball to play with. And for me to end up many years later focusing on a red ball, does put it all down to old man taking something home. You know, when he used to come up from the mines and spend hours and hours and hours chasing the ball. But Old Parks was just part of that process. Lovely club. And as you know, I was heavily involved with Transvaal for a long time. Capacity as a coach, also capacity as a
Neal, 1976, as I said, that's 1976 season. I think that's when you just started playing for that, breaking into that Transvaal team, the Mean Machine. When you played for Transvaal B, you would have had guys like Norman Featherston, Peter de Waal, probably a Hubbard, fast bowler that played for Old Eds. That's just sort of that team. A young Jimmy Cook, and then getting into that Transvaal team, which was Spook Handley and I mean the Transvaal Mean Machine, Graham Pollock, Fotheringham. How did that happen as a youngster? That must have been quite a experience to play as a youngster in a team with those players around you.
I totally endorse that. I mean, it's, you know, Transvaal is certainly, from my perspective, I was very privileged to play with those players. Best side I've ever played in. The Lord knows how strong that team was. When I take you back, when I had to do my military service in South Africa, I played for Western Transvaal. Prior to that, obviously, I'd played South African schools cricket. So there was the cricket element in terms of theme was already there, it just needed nurturing. I went into the army, I played in the Defence Force sides, and I ended up playing for Western Transvaal country districts because I was based at Potch. And that's where I was doing my military service. And I remember a game when we traveled to Joburg, and I can't quite recall where we played. It might have been at one of the universities. It might have been at Wits or somewhere like that. But we played against a Transvaal Invitation team then, and they had some of the names you just mentioned in that side. I did obviously very well. In those early days, I remember being a little bit just trying to want to bowl fast and not being accurate. And I think that has, to a point, changed somewhat, because over my years when I went to Lancashire and played in the Lancashire leagues and stuff like that, if you are going to bowl people out, you need to be able to learn the art of swing bowling, and also when there is no swing available, being able to seam it. You mentioned green wickets early doors. Certainly in the early seasons in England, certainly from April, May, and June, we'll have a little bit of moisture in those pitches, which allow you to actually seam the ball. And then as the summer progresses, that seam will go out of the wicket. So you've got to learn to know how to get the ball past the bat. And that certainly means swinging it. But in terms of the players, yeah, I mean, when I first got into the Transvaal side, there were an abundance of talent. I mean, I was up against a number of very, very talented cricketers. And I think then, having moved away from Carltonville and moved to Johannesburg, where I was trying to do some university correspondence, I ended up getting picked in the B team. And then from there on in, working myself into a club side. West Rand, do you remember the West Rand? We had so many fun people in the West Rand, and I remember going to nets, and the guys used to turn up with a crate of beers. For the life of me, are we practicing or are we drinking? But some of the guys just class acts. Some of the guys just fun, and that was the thing about club cricket in those days. I think you asked me the question about club cricket. My word, the finest club cricket anybody could ever want to play in those corresponding years. Both Transvaal A and Transvaal B were just studded with talent, And the thing about being able to represent your province was that if you did not play club cricket on a weekend when there was no provincial matches, you weren't selected. There's no ways, even Graham Pollock. So Graham had to go and play for Old Eds on a weekend when there was no Transvaal matches in order for him to play for Transvaal the following week. And I think that raised the profile, of the league. It raised the profile of all those people playing in that league. And it was a serious standard. You turn up at Old Eds on a Sunday and not be able to park your car because there's already 2,000 people parked and sitting around the ground waiting for Mr. Pollock to turn up. Yeah, those were the days.
Neal, can you run me through some of the names and maybe some of the players that you played with in that Transvaal team? I know it's probably a story that used to go around the cricket pubs where the guy said Graham Pollock actually never had a proper net against bowlers. He would just have throwdowns. Is that true, or is it sort of 50-50? You wouldn't have as many nets maybe as a Jimmy Cook that spent hours facing bowlers in the nets.
Well, I think let's run through the team and then discuss the other things. I mean, so your opening batters. So I had 10 years of this team. The opening batters were Jimmy Cook and Henry Fotheringham. Now, Cookie came over to England and played, I think, 3 seasons for Somerset and scored something like 6,000 first-class runs, which was just ridiculous. And he always said that his favourite opening bat was Henry Fotheringham. Fothers was one of these quiet sort of chaps that realistically did his work and realistically wasn't, in your face with his batting, graceful. But those two would regularly get 150, 1 out of 3 times, 2 out of 3 times as a start. And then you have this little diminutive, small West Indian coming into the bat, left-hander, Mr. Alvin Karacharan. Well, he was one of the greatest left-handed batters that ever graced this planet. And following him was an even better, potentially left-handed batter, a bit more robust, completely different individual as Graham Pollock, hit the ball in areas. He used to, I think he used to play with fielders. You'd set a field and then he'd move it the way he wanted to bat. He was just phenomenal. Then you obviously had Clive Rice, the captain that used to come in at 5. You had Kevin McKenzie. The other thing about Clive, Clive Rice used to say, right, chaps, practice at 5 o'clock. And the respect we had for the man, nobody arrived later than 4:30. It was just unbelievable. Following him, you had Kevin McKenzie, whose son obviously also played for South Africa. A wonderful player, fast bowling, didn't wear a helmet, and just took everybody on. You couldn't bowl short to the man. And he, again, another individual that just demanded number 6. He did it for South Africa. He did it for Transvaal. And then you had our big left-arm spin bowler, Mr. Lebanese, who played baseball for South Africa, Alan Curry. And then you have Ray Jennings, for me, the best wicketkeeper I've had the privilege of playing with. Also a very, very talented batter. Him, both Jet and Alan would, if ever Transvaal suffered, those two would get us out of it. They were very capable. Then there was myself. We had Sylvester Clark in the team, mean and fast. Then there was obviously Hugh Page. There was Spook Hanley. I even played with Mr. Van der Bijl. Lovely man. Yeah, the talent was phenomenal in those days. Hello, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Neil.
And all of those players would typically go into the leagues. Now, you asked me a question about Graham and batting. Graham, you would not see Graham with his pads on facing the bowlers. It's just, he would not do that. He would have throwdowns. He wanted pupil dilation, if you can understand what that means, so that he wanted to see the ball close up into his bat. And so his hands and his eyes were working much faster than having to wait for the guy to let the ball go at 20-odd yards away. So he would prefer that. So throwdowns, absolutely. But he would spend half an hour with Jet, Raymond Jennings, and all they would do is he would hit balls with his, and Jet would say right hand, left hand. And that's all they do. Say, lob it to him, hit it, lob it, catch, catch. They spend half an hour doing just that. So both of them would benefit it, because Ray was getting pupil dilation so that he would see the ball react, see the ball react, see the ball react. And the same was being applied with Graham with his hitting. He didn't need a net, it was just too good. It was pointless bowling at Graham. And that was his practice. He would have that. Then he'd go run around the field, he'd come and do some exercises, and then they'd go and do slip catching. And again, he loved slip catching. So each of us, typically a net session's a net session. The batters bat, the bowlers bowl, and those are bowlers that want to have a bat, go and have a bat. For me, people don't realize this. I never had, very seldom did you take pads and bats when you traveled away, because it was very seldom you were going to bat. in that team. Phenomenal team. You know, it's so much runs. And more than anything, great people. Wonderful, wonderful men, you know, both off the field, on the field, very competitive, very professional. And I say this, you know, I mean, nowadays, I don't know if they do it. They probably do it quite a lot of it. But in our day, when Ricey was captain, we would discuss the opposition. And remember, I mean, we were successful during that period. You know that. We would discuss the opposition. So if we're playing Western Province, who were littered with talent, whether they came up to the Transvaal or whether we went down to Newlands, typically the night before the game, we would meet in the manager's room and then we'd sit down and have a cold beer with the team and talk about the opposition and talk about the tactics in terms of getting out, you know, the various batters that Western Province would have, or how we would go about facing their seam attack and Hobson as a spinner or whoever. And there would be a phase one. If that didn't work, where we'd really go phase two. So it was, in terms of professionalism, it was an amateur setup, but the thought process was completely professional. And I suppose that's why, you know, we were successful. Everybody knew where the bowlers were going to be bowling at a certain batter. And if that didn't change, phase two. If conditions didn't suit us, phase three. And so it went on. So everybody, when they came to net practice, knew exactly what they needed to do at that net practice. It wasn't about running and bowling short to ground, you know, Jimmy Cook and try and hit him on the head. The idea was try and get him out bowling length balls, because that's what a batter wants. The batter wants to be tested. It doesn't want you running around and letting the ball go and trying to prove your quickness. He wants you to try also to get him out. And if you can, in the net session, get those world-class batters out, well, it's only improving your game. So, and then the fielding and the exercise. I mean, a lot of times batting and bowling wasn't important. It was important to a point, but there might be more to do in the field, focusing on certain things in the field, you know, getting fitness. The fitness element was very important. I think that was one of the reasons why I potentially bowled so many overs, because when you play at altitude, you can only get fit, and you're fitter at altitude than you are at sea level. So for me, coming to England always allowed me to bowl more overs than my fellow colleagues.
Neil, Clive Rice, in those preparations, preparing the team, you know, these days a lot of talk goes around the coaches. For the life of me, I followed that Transvaal team. That was my days as a school kid in Johannesburg. I played club cricket there at Pirates. I threw 1,000 balls to Jimmy Cook, who played for Pirates. He used to call me over from the second team nets because he knew I used to love throwing to him. And but I, for the life of me, can't recall the name of a Transvaal coach during that time. It was always just Clive Rice.
No, we never had. Well, Ricey wasn't the coach. Ricey was the captain. Yeah. Ricey was the general. No, there was no coach. I mean, I, in my role working for Transvaal Cricket, I was director of cricket, and I ran all the coaching across the whole of the Transvaal. That was my remit. So if any coaching needed to happen, it probably would go through me. But we didn't have a first-class coach looking after the team. We didn't have a we had a physio that didn't even travel with us. You know, we didn't have a nutritionist. We didn't have a bag man. We didn't have anything. It was just us. And that support mechanism in terms of the 12 lads going away, living out of one another's pockets, having the ability to talk about anything, anytime, knock on a door. I think that was the element that togetherness cover the issue of not having a coach, or, you know, those sort of figures that today invariably in the professional game, they just they're there.
Neil, I think young cricketers listening to this podcast today actually can't imagine that, going to a net without a coach. I think most teams today. The guys would arrive at the ground. The coach is not there. They'll sit and wait for the coach. They wouldn't know what to do. It sounds amazing, and it worked because you had players of the caliber you guys had, and I think if you could say the glue. I think I always look at teams. I've done a bit of coaching myself, and you look at coaches. I was fortunate to be coached by Bob Wilmer in Cape Town at university. Stellenbosch Edibala was my coach. I always see the coach as the glue of a team. Would you say Clive Rice? What he did at Notts, what he did for Transvaal, Clive Rice as a leader, Clive Rice keeping those huge big names together. Can you tell me a little bit about the influence Clive Rice and his personality had on that team?
Well, he led from the front, and I suppose realistically he didn't have to say much, and I go back to that point. If he said, right, lads, I'll see you at nets at 5 o'clock, nobody came after 5. They were always there at 4:30. Such is the respect we had for the man. And going back to your point about coaching, when you've got serious bowlers, including Clive in your side, and you got Vince, and you got Spook, and you got Hugh Page, and you got Sylvester, if any of those guys felt that there was something wrong with their rhythm or they weren't bowling properly, we would pick it up. We'd understand it and be able to quickly. I mean, there's no better way than potentially speaking to a fellow bowler. I mean, I had this issue. I felt as a bowler, I didn't have much rhythm. So I phoned Vince van der Bijl up, who was playing for us. And I said, Vinny, are you able to give me half an hour? It was at the Wanderers nets. And he said, Runners, I'll be down at 12:15. But I can only do half an hour. I've got to get back to work. I said, perfect. Anyway, within that half an hour in the nets, as a bowler, it's either left arm's going wrong, or it's your hips are getting through the crease, or there's something potentially rhythmically that's not working for your body to allow you to propel the ball down where you want it to land and at pace. And I just said, I'm going to run up. This is what I think is not happening. Stand behind me and just tell me. And then what he'll do is he'll go to the front, as a coach would do. That's what a coach would do. It'll just have a look, see what your rhythm's like, see what your run-up's like, how are you propelling yourself through the crease, and then go in front and see if your left arm is going where it should be, because I'm a right-arm bowler, and what is happening with your knee. Is it collapsing, etc., etc.? So is there snap? That's what we talk about as quick bowlers, snap. And we did that for half an hour. And literally within 10 minutes of me bowling, Vince said, this is not happening. That's not happening. I think you should be higher here, blah, blah, blah. Fixed. So the ability to want advice, that's important, even at that level. And secondly, the fact that your fellow cricketer at that level would make time to come and help you. That just shows you the camaraderie of that team, led by the legend Clive Rice. And he did that at Notts as well. He led a wonderful squad of players at Notts. Richard Hadley was his opening partner, and great mates. But yeah, I mean, rest in peace, Ricey. Rest in peace. He was a wonderful bloke. Wonderful man, phenomenal cricketer, led by example, and very proud. And I think he led a team that he could quite rightly say was probably the best team, club team, provincial team South Africa's ever produced. And look, I mean, you had eight Springboks. All of them were 8. Been through them. You had 2 West Indians, Kalacharayan and Sylvester Clarke, and you had Radford, who was qualified English. So And if it wasn't for qualified English, I probably would have gone down that South African route. Whether I would have been picked or not, I don't know. But that was the issue in terms of isolation. You had to go elsewhere.
Neal, that I think it's a very nice lead in to the, I would say, the second part of your career as a professional cricketer. Going to the UK in 1980, if my memory serves me right. I did some research before our interview. You went to play cricket in Lancashire. You had 5 seasons in Lancashire. Then you moved on to Worcestershire, and in 1986 you were one of the 5 Western Cricketers of the Year, which, I mean, what a achievement to have your name as a Western Cricketer of the Year. You played your first test for England. You took 101 wickets in county cricket that year. Tell us a little bit about your. If I can ask you firstly, the from South African cricket, where provincial cricket you play on weekends, you play a lot of club cricket, to going to county cricket, especially for a bowler. And I know you never shied away from bowling. You wanted the ball. You had a reputation as Neal wants to be involved. Neal wants to have the ball in his hand. You bowled a lot of overs in your career. Can you take us a little bit to all of a sudden playing county cricket, playing every day of the week, playing on those wickets, playing in different weather conditions? Would you say your bowling was maybe even more suited to bowling in English conditions than South Africa, or did you adjust your game? You had to find a way, and you worked more on swinging the ball than on pace on English wickets, using the overcast conditions, using, often, as you said, the first 2-3 months, the wickets are more green, there's more seam movement, ball moves in the air. What was it like to then go and play your cricket in the UK?
Of course, when I finished school and did my military service, I loved rugby. I played rugby at a high level. I played Defence Force rugby and played schools rugby. Rugby was my first love. Cricket was never my first love. Never. It's just that you play one in the winter, one in the summer, and it made no difference. And being in the boarding school, I'll go back to the point when I was a kid, balls. Just play with balls. It makes no difference what time of the year it is. As long as you've got a ball in your hand, off you go. But
Neal, I have to ask this question. Sorry to interrupt you. Were you by any chance a fly half? Because most cricketers seems to be fly halves.
I started as fly half and I ended up as fullback. And I tell you why I ended up as fullback, because my brother Wayne came into the side as fly half, and he was far better than me. And fullback is, in those days, if you remember the flowing rugby, as opposed to the contact sport it is today. Yes. In those days, you had to, being a fly half was, it added value when you moved to the back, because you knew how the fly half would play, so you could position yourself as a fullback in the right areas and read the game better than probably not having had that position. So yeah, I love rugby. Oh, I loved it. We were useless as a school, but I loved it. Yeah, we used to get so much good time. But anyway, so yeah, when I'd done my military stint, I said to my dad, look, I need to somehow earn some money, because I want to go over to Wales and just let my hair grow again, just go and enjoy myself. And in those days, the late 70s, middle 70s, late 70s, there was no finer rugby nation globally than Wales. They produced all the greatest rugby players to play for the Lions. And so that was my dream. I'm going to go to Wales. I didn't know where Wales was, but I was going to get a ticket, and I'm going to end up in Wales. And I went for 3 months. It was in the winter period, because obviously winter here is rugby season. It's not cricket season. And I was here on a 3-month visa for January, February, March. And during that period, I met Alan Jones, who was the captain of Glamorgan, left-hand bat, and I think had a couple of seasons playing for Natal. And I met him at a rugby game, and he said to me, well, boyo, do you want to come and play some cricket? And I looked at him. I mean, it was snowing outside, and I thought, geez, the Welsh are tough, aren't they? Playing cricket outside in this sort of weather, they must be nuts. And no, they had this indoor facility in Cardiff, and he picked me up twice a week. So I watched the rugby during the week, and I had so much fun as a young lad, enjoying fun, having some enjoyable period, and then watched a bit of rugby, and then went to indoor nets. And it was from those indoor nets that the word got around about this lad, Radford, who had played South African schools, played in the Defence Force seasons, and it was over here, and potentially he could play club cricket. And it was Glamorgan County Cricket Club that got me the opportunity, because they said Swansea Cricket Club are quite keen for a young lad to stay and play. Would you go and do that? And remember, my mindset was not cricket. My mindset was 3 months visa, have fun, grow the hair, enjoy, right? And then get in a plane, go home, and then who knows? I wanted to study and get a BCom degree, right? That's what I wanted to do. And I had my placement at Wits University, and then that was where I was going to go. And as it turned out, this thing that came from the side saying, would you like to play club cricket? And I thought, why would I want to do that? How am I going to benefit? No, we'll pay you, and we'll sort a car out, and we'll get you some digs and all that sort of stuff. I thought, you're going to pay me to play cricket? Yeah. Well, won't be a lot of money, but anyway, long story short, I ended up saying, I'd love that. So I had to extend my visa now, right? The club sorted that out. And I stayed for that summer and played for Swansea Cricket Club. And I had a lovely time. Brilliant. Right by the sea. I had these digs right by the ground. So I could train all day, every day. And lovely, lovely people. Played second team cricket for Glamorgan. In those days, you could have 3 or 4 overseas players. Kippy Smith, Robin Smith, they all played there. Javed Miendo, all played at the same time. And I got, during that process, I was asked by the coach at Glamorgan, a chap called Tony Caudle, if I'd like to go up to the Lancashire League and play on a Saturday for Burnley versus Blackburn. One, I didn't know where Lancashire was. Certainly didn't know where Burnley and Blackpool were, Blackburn were. And I had no idea how I was going to get up there. And they said, it'll be brilliant for your career. And I said, I'm only doing this for this season. I'm going back to rugby. They said, no, go and play. You'll enjoy it. Go and play. You'll do a good job. Anyway, the reason I went up was that Burnley's professional had to go home for a bereavement. So they had this void, and they were looking for somebody at short notice. And as it turned out, there's a young lad down here, he can bat and bowl. You go up there. I had no idea what I was in for. Nothing. I got on the train, and I was picked up at the train station by the secretary of the club. He put me in one of his bedrooms overnight, and the following day we went to Blackburn, and we played this game of cricket. And driving the car there, he said, I want you to know this. We're playing against the headquarters of the Lancashire League. He said, do you know about the Lancashire League? I said, I have no idea what the Lancashire League's all about. And as you know, it's just full of legendary names that played in that league. All the Sirs, you go through all the Sirs, they've all played there. Botham, Lara, they've all played. They've all played in the Lancashire League. And he's talking to me as we get to, and he says, this team's got a very, very talented Australian as their overseas player. And I said, oh, okay. Who is he? And he said, he's Alan Border. I said, Alan who? Alan Border. You not heard of Alan Border? I said, no. Never heard of the man. So naive was I, of this Lancashire League stuff and world cricket and first-class cricket. I had nothing. I was a rugby bloke that wanted to play rugby, but somehow I got stuck into cricket. Anyway, so we went. I got FIFA and got a collection. Got £2, I think it was, for the collection. Well done. Couldn't buy myself a glass of water, let alone buy the lads beers. And the secretary had to put £10 into it to make up the collection, so we could. Oh well, there we go. We won. We didn't win the game because typical Lancashire. It allowed us to bowl, and then the weather decided it will not allow us to bat. So it was a drawn match. But that was my recollection of playing first-class cricket, or against first-class cricketers in a club environment certainly in England. And then I went back down to Swansea, and before I knew it, there was an offer for me to go and play up in the Lancashire League permanently for a team called Bacup, BACUP. And when you drive through Lancashire and you get stuck in a village and you say, "Dear sir, could you tell me where Bacup is?" And he'll say, "Are you talking about Bacup on top of hill? Right on top of hill?" I said, "Well, yeah, it is on the top of a hill." He said, "Well, you just keep going on this road, lad, you'll get there." And so anyway, that was it. Whenever I got lost, I'd find the same bloke telling me where to go. And then obviously playing in the Lancashire League allowed me to have trials with Lancashire because I was doing reasonably well. And I went and played second team. I couldn't play first class cricket in England because I was seen as coming from South Africa. So I had to do residency. So any matches that I played as an overseas player in the second team 11. And then Lancashire decided, right, well, why don't we go through the process of getting you qualified? Because if you get qualified, you could then play as a local lad, as a citizen. So I had to do that for 7 years. And unfortunately, in 7 years, I only played about 20 first-class games for Lancashire because they had two very, very, very good players called Clive Lloyd and Michael Holding. So I wasn't really going to go in front of those two, was I, as a young whippersnapper? But it was a wonderful grounding for me. So when I finished and I'll come back to the cricket element shortly, but when I finished the English summer, I then went back home to Joburg and I opened the bowling for Transvaal. So I knew I was very capable of playing for Lancashire in their first team. But because I was an overseas cricketer, I couldn't really, you could only have two playing, and those two certainly, I'm not going to push my way in front of Michael Holding, for goodness sake. So that went on for a period of time. I was at Lancashire. I was playing mainly second team cricket, taking loads of wickets, doing well, enjoying it. But I wasn't really playing in the first team because I couldn't realistically walk into the side as a local citizen. And going back to your point about the conditions as a bowler, that is the first thing you do. You look at the pitch and work out, how am I going to get wickets? I don't care what age you are, how many years you've played Test cricket, whether you're Jimmy Anderson or nobody. That's the first thing you do. You assess that pitch, and then you work out, potentially conditions-wise, wind, what side should I realistically bowl from? What's going to benefit me and the team? How am I going to get the best out of this? And bearing in mind, in my career, unfortunately, I sometimes had to bowl on the opposite side of where I wanted to bowl, just for the benefit of whoever it was on the other side. And in England, in club cricket, Lancashire League cricket, we played on wickets that were so slow that it was pointless bowling short, because they'd just sit there and just take their time and just and then put it behind square, and cut it. And then if you pitched it up, they were ready. They just drive. So you had to bowl areas. One to contain, but more importantly, work out how you were going to get this batsman out. Because Lancashire League was all about time. It was it's overs. So if you could contain a team to a certain score, well, hopefully your team will go out and get them. But as a bowler, I think that's the important thing. You focus on how this pitch is going to assist me either to stop the run scoring or to get wickets. How am I going to be successful on this pitch? And the Lancashire League was slow. Typically all of them, I'd say 7 out of 10 pitches were batter friendly. And then you'd go and play county cricket where you'd play on better wickets where there'd be a little bit more bounce. But invariably, there was always going to be some lateral movement of some sort. And as you know, the English cricket balls are completely different to a kookaburra. There's a little bit more seam. And if you protect that ball, you're going to get wickets. Going back to SA, now we're playing on club cricket wickets where you've got good climatic conditions. Pitches are harder. So you'd bring that length back. You don't bowl the same length that's just going to skid onto a bat and he just has to lean through it. You bring that length back by maybe a half a meter or something to that effect, so that the ball bounce now is going to go past the bat and you get that edge. And that's just assessing, and people shouldn't bear that in mind. I think the problem is there's not enough thought process in terms of how am I going to work this team out. And for me to get 100 wickets in a season, of which I did it twice, my thought process was purely on, right, I'm playing against Essex. Yes, Graham Gooch is opening the batting, but he's a number. He's number one. I get number one out, then I've got to focus on 3. Get 3 out, then I've got to focus on 5. And so it goes on. You know what I mean? So just knock them off. Just a bit like Skittles. Just knock them off. That was my thought process. I had to get numbers. And the sooner we could bowl them out, the sooner I can get my feet up and relax. And that was it. So the mythology was, right, my job is to knock people over, to get people out, not knock them on the head, although sometimes we had to, or you had to at least put some pressure on the batsman. But typically the way I got wickets was bowling at you. I bowled line and length, LBWs, 30% of my wickets were LBWs. And if it seams and it swings, I'm a threat to you. That's what I wanted to be.
Neil, can I ask you a favor? Just listening to you, it's very hard to keep me quiet. I love talking. I've never been so quiet. It is just phenomenal. Actually, it's my era of cricket. This is this is the era where I was a bit younger than you. I played 11 seasons of club cricket in the UK. I can relate so much, but I never had that experience of county cricket to play against those people. You guys were all heroes to me. That transforming machine. I went to Stellenbosch University later in Cape Town, the Western Province team with Eddie Barlow, Garth LaRue, Jeffries, Alan Land, Peter Kirsten. So for me to sit here and listen to you, I would go on all day with that podcast. Can I ask you a huge favor? Can we do a part 2? Because we've covered South African cricket, Mean Machine. Our podcast has already been going for probably close to 45 minutes. I think we need probably at least another 45 to talk about England. Playing Test cricket for England, 3 Tests, 6 ODIs, your career booster playing with a guy like Graham Hick. County cricket, playing against some of the best cricketers in the world, especially in those days when you played. Yeah. The overseas players were, you mentioned a few. You just mentioned at Lancashire. Later on at Lancashire, you had Wazam Akram. You can go on and on. Andrew Roberts at Hampshire, Barry Richards at Hampshire. You played with and against these guys. That's a whole podcast on its own. Can I ask you, could we do, if people that's listening to the podcast, I'm sure after this, they'll all be lining up to hear. They cannot miss part 2. Are you okay with the part 2 of this podcast?
Absolutely. No problem. No problem.
Fantastic.
I'd welcome, it'd be lovely. And the other thing is, I look forward to catching up with you the end of this month when you come over with your kids from Ukraine. At rugby school. That'll be lovely. Catch up and we'll have a coffee together.
Neil, I look forward to that so much. And I cannot leave the podcast without mentioning that I've been doing this cricket. It's a passion in Ukraine now for 6 years on and off. I did it 4 years before the war. During the war, I went to Zagreb, where I did for 2 years, I did a program for Ukrainian refugee children, up to 200. I had no equipment, and I had 200 kids, Ukrainian kids, wanting to play cricket in a park in Zagreb, in Croatia. Traumatized kids from the war. They came from places like Bakhmut, Mariupol, where the cities were destroyed. You caught up with me. I think it could have been on LinkedIn or on Facebook. You saw my story. You contacted me. I couldn't believe it. Jeez, Neal Radford is sending me a message, and you offered me help. You said you are involved with the Lord Staveners. You can help me with equipment. Do I need equipment? And the Lord Staveners, thanks to you, sent me 8 boxes of equipment, which unfortunately I had to leave most of it behind in Zagreb. I had to leave in a hurry. My visa literally got cancelled. I had a week to get out of Zagreb with my 4 dogs. So I had to leave most of that equipment behind in Zagreb, but it served an unbelievable purpose for 2 years with that program with the refugees. But the help that you gave me through Lord Staveners, and I believe even though we haven't seen each other, I've built up, I call you my friend, we've built up a friendship, staying in contact. You always follow me on LinkedIn, what's happening in Ukraine. And the steward to rugby, we've agreed that I will meet you on Monday, the 27th of October, which is, it's like 10 days away. I'll be seeing you, and I can't wait to see you in rugby. And hopefully we can do the second podcast before. If you have the time, I'll contact you and we'll do the follow-up podcast before we go to rugby. And I look forward to seeing you in rugby.